Good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock. I'll call to order the regular meeting of the Simsbury Planning Commission. I'd like to thank Ken and SCTV for filming and to welcome our Selectman Liaison, Michael Payne, here and the public. We have a full crew, so there are no alternates to be seated, and we are still in a public hearing. The application 13-08 of Brian General Land Surveying Applicant Advantage Contracting LLC owner requesting re-subdivision of the property located at 70 King Philip Road, map H15, block 109, lot 005B, to create 3 lots, zone R80. It's continued from our last meeting of January 28th this year. Do you want to talk first, or the applicant want to talk? We're still in a public hearing. What's the best order?
Yeah, I think the applicant may want to just sum up from where they were last time and any changes that have been made. And then I suspect that the commission may want to, if you have any comments about the field walking, we can make those later. You can move it up if you want.
Good evening, I'm Brian Deno from Deno Land Surveying, here to represent Advantage Contracting for the application at 70 King Spring Road. This is a continuation of the meeting from 2 weeks ago, and 2 weeks ago we had some questions from the Farming Valley Health District. We wanted to get a clean letter from them, and we have that. And also the commission wanted to walk the site and see where the proposed houses were going to go. And actually, since you've walked the site, the client met with the downhill abutter, and when you walk the site, they had this house turned 90 degrees looking down this way. And he met with the abutter, and he decided that it's not advantageous for the abutter to see that big long house, so he turned it 90 degrees to make it so what he's looking at is less of a profile and less through the woods, so you won't see as much house there. We actually also moved it to the east a little bit. So it is a little different than your walk on Saturday. We also had to address some comments from the past town engineer and the present town engineer about LID, low impact development. They asked us to revisit our drainage system, and we've done that. And using LID as a guideline, we removed the stone line swale on this part of the road and put a grass line swale on both sides of the road and added some catch basins. We've also increased the radius here of this corner to make it easier for the fire trucks and to try to meet closer to the road regulations that the town asked for. The new town engineer asked for a 200-foot radius. We've provided a 90-foot radius because the 200-foot radius would cut like that to make a huge scar in the property. And this also separates more the driveway for the new homes and the existing house at 66 Kings Phillips Road. And on discussion with Rich Sawicki and Jeff Shea, we've removed the detention basin here and piped the water from here into the existing drainage system per Rich Sawicki's advice. We've also added a rain garden here to catch the water coming down the hill and dissipate it into the ground, and any overflow will be taken by a pipe underneath the rain garden into the stone line swale is going to be enhanced in this area along the existing drive. There were some housekeeping questions that the town engineer and the town staff had. We've taken care of most of those with notes on the cover sheet about no garbage pickup. We're not inside a water supply area, things like that. I believe we've addressed all his comments there. And we still are providing almost 25% of the site as a conservation easement. And in discussions with the town, we're going to put plaques along the conservation easement to keep the homeowners from going in there and cutting any trees. I think that's about it, unless Joe has anything to add.
Hobble up here, I think I have a broken foot, so bear with me here. I'm Jared Kravitz, I'm the owner of Advantage Contracting, and the one item that I think that was misspoken about at the last meeting was that we were providing both conservation area that met the needs of open space for the project as well as fee in lieu of, and what we discussed at the planning meeting walk around this past weekend was hanging on to that fee in lieu of and using that to apply toward the fire sprinkler systems, which I've agreed to put in, and the 2 new construction homes. We are providing roughly 3 acres of open space conservation area for the subdivision, so it definitely exceeds the requirements for this property for that. I think that's it.
Happy to answer any questions.
The existing house is going to be reconfigured to be 3 bedrooms.
Yes.
Is there anything that would keep a future owner from making it back into 4? That's what
I don't think so.
the Health
Really,
District was.
really, it was technically a 3-bedroom house to begin with. That somebody years before had kind of ordered it up by providing additional construction details that allowed it to become a 4-bedroom. But technically, it is a 3-bedroom. The size of that cased opening between the rooms. I talked to Henry, the building official, at length about it yesterday, and he instructed me after our discussions to contact the assessor and make sure that that field card was revised to correctly reflect the 3-bedroom design.
Right now, it was a 4-bedroom, but you had to walk through 1 bedroom to get to the other in the basement. Is that correct?
That's right.
Have you received the letter dated today from the town engineer?
No, I have not. Yes, I have.
Take a moment to review that.
Yeah, it'd be great if we went through those points. Thanks.
Comment number 1, the electrical cable, telephone, gas, and electric. We have contacted the utility companies. Utility companies do not like to comment or start the review unless something is approved. And we discussed that with the town engineer, but he asked us to show the easements on the plan. So we showed them from the existing pole, which is the way we would like to do it. There's existing electric that comes, electric and gas that comes up to this point here, above ground, that serves the existing house. So we'd like to drop it underground to serve this house and serve this house, and that would be the least intrusive to the environment because it's already clear here and it's already clear there. But as with the state, utility companies don't like to comment unless something is approved because they don't have the time to do it over and over again.
What about the driveway width?
So I'm just reading it now.
It sounds like, it looks like Jeff is overruling the fire marshal's request for a 15-foot driveway and 1.5 feet of gravel on each side.
Well, I'm not sure that's quite right. I think what he's talking about is the possibility of having material in the shoulders that might not be acceptable. And I think what he's saying is that if that's the case, then he would recommend 19 feet wide is that if acceptable gravel shoulders as proposed cannot be achieved. So I believe that, I think that we're still in sync here. It's going to really depend on what you find in the field when you get there.
Right, yeah, I think that's what he's saying, if field conditions require. And he asked us to put under drains on the drive as it goes up the hill, which we have done. And the fire marshal at first was agreeable to 18 feet, but then he went to 19. And instead of having 2 feet on each side with gravel underneath and then 6 inches of loam on top, we've actually brought the gravel right to the surface. So it'll still be a hard surface. So if in the field, if Jeff likes that, then we'll have the 15 feet of pavement and 2 feet of hard packed gravel on both sides. And that's okay because our catch basins are outside anyway, in the gravel outside the 15 feet of pavement. But if he recommends that we pave the other 2 feet on each side, then we'll have to do it.
Can 2 cars pass by each other on this proposed private road?
He asked for a passing lane not down here. He says that exists up here, and we decided to do it in the driveway there. But 19 feet, that's, most cars are 5.5 feet wide. You get a big SUV, it might be 7 mirror to mirror.
Anyone from the public like to comment, have questions? If you want to
Sure.
go up there and identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Bill Gallagher. I live at 2 Highwood. I'm in the property right adjacent to this property. I was here 2 weeks ago for the meeting. I was also at the walkthrough on Saturday morning. Just one comment that I made on Saturday morning, I just wanted to kind of get it on the record here, because I know there were no notes being taken on Saturday. My wife and I did have just a concern about what this was going to do to our property values, since the town road that's, or not the town road, the private road that's being proposed here is right adjacent to our property. And currently it's servicing only one house, and now with this configuration it's going to be servicing 4. So there's a lot more traffic that's going to be literally right next to our property, and we're just kind of concerned about that. And another question that I had subsequent to that meeting on Saturday was, I wasn't sure if there's any kind of restrictions or guidelines about how close a road like that can be to an adjacent property, if there's any, it has to be so many feet away, or, because at points it's like literally touching right up against our property. So I just wanted to just make that comment and ask that question.
Herb, is that a zoning regulation or?
Yeah, the right-of-way is actually there, and so I think what the town engineers were working on was trying to minimize the impact of that. And certainly, the waivers that have been asked for in this case would lessen the impact of that road. If it were required to build to an actual town standard, it would be a significantly wider cut, deeper cut, and so on. So I think that the plans here that have been looked at and have been proposed do the best with the existing situation where the existing right-of-way is. So the drainage certainly has been significantly gone over a number of times, so there should be no adverse drainage impacts there. Hopefully the vegetation would continue to grow throughout time, and it wouldn't be, there's no question that there's more houses there, no question about that. But it's certainly not through road, so it's just going to be the folks that live there.
We'd also be willing to give him some plantings here along the drive here, or where it's sparse, to give him more privacy. We can, meet with you in the field and decide where to go. We'll do some evergreen, so we'll give you year-round protection.
Mr. Gallagher, how close is your residence to that side property line?
It's hard to tell exactly from this.
It's not listed there at all.
Yeah, it's probably right around here.
I mean, in yardage, you think?
Maybe 20 yards.
So you're relatively close.
It's very close, yeah.
20 yards, 60 feet.
60 feet, yeah, roughly.
Yeah, we'd have to be at least 40, because the side yard's 40 feet, so.
Right, not just the property line yet there, or the lots are rather large, and so I wasn't sure where your house was situated relative to the side boundary line.
Yeah, because our house is here, and then we have our driveway and the landing area right outside the driveway, and then a small bank that's maybe 8 or 10 feet, and then it's you're pretty much right up here against the property line and the driveway.
Do you believe plantings would suffice as far as your privacy and needs are concerned?
It would help. It certainly wouldn't eliminate it.
Yeah.
But I mean, that's certainly something we can talk about. Yeah. Like I said, this driveway is literally right there. We're standing outside our, in our driveway right outside our garage. It's right there.
But there is an elevation.
It is an elevation, yeah.
So it wouldn't take a lot of height to
Get you green it.
Right.
Yeah.
Screen it.
Right.
And then I wouldn't take the full length either of the driveway. It's probably a select area in that elevation change.
Yep.
Hiram, is one of the waivers you talked about the proximity of the driveway to his property line? Isn't it typically 10 feet?
No, that's not, the waiver that they asked for is the grade of the driveway.
Okay, that's different.
Yep.
Good. Am I wrong that driveways typically have to be 10 feet off a property line?
There's really no requirement to that.
Oh, really?
You know, not that I'm aware of. As long as they, I mean, it's beyond the other property, obviously. Typically, we like to see at least 5 feet, you know. Something like this is paved, you know, if the applicant's willing to put screening in there, I think that would be, you know, certainly a good thing and help for the abutting property owners.
Nothing else growing.
Poison ivy too,
It's good at keeping the kids out of it.
not always. I think I'm all set.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Any other comments from the public? Questions? Commissioners?
Hiram, do we traditionally accept conservation easements as part of open space?
It has been done in the past, Bill. In this case, this application sort of morphed a couple of times now tonight. I think what you heard was that there is no more opportunity for the fee in lieu of, because that needs to be not only the applicant, but the commission accepting that. So if the applicant is not interested in that, that's currently off the table. But with regard to the open space, typically what the commission looks for is 20% open space, either in fee or in some cases, and I think in this case, isn't it up to 30%?
Yes, it is.
Most recent map, so it's significantly above what is currently allowed. The conservation easement would be a document that would be reviewed by the town attorney, accepted then by the Board of Selectmen. It wouldn't be town open space necessarily, depending on how it's worded. It would be private open space. Town has no desire to maintain lots of these smaller areas as long as it's ultimately preserved. But it can be done as either a fee in lieu, a fee, simple transaction, or conservation easements.
In calculating the area of an open space, I think there's a limitation on the elevation change or slope. And it looks like the majority of that proposed conservation easement is very steep.
Some areas it is, there's no question about that. I think that what happens in sort of the limbs of this is that it's less steep in these areas here as it goes down to the wetlands. This is obviously a more desirable area to protect as well. And then actually, if you go across this area, the difference in elevation is not significant in this direction. It certainly is steep down here where the topo lines are closer together, and it's certainly steep up in this area here. But because it's significantly in excess of the 20%, when I talked to Howard about this, his idea was that this particular configuration was good as far from a conservation standpoint, so he was willing to accept that.
Yeah, that way the town doesn't have to deal with it as open space. Any questions or comments? Hiram?
A number of things just to bring up. Many of you have heard before, but just for the record, the most current plans that we have, and I think I've given you, there are at least 3 sets out there tonight, are dated 2/9/14. So those show the lots having the appropriate setback in accordance with the regulations. You do have, as part of your package, a requested waiver of the road regulations. That waiver was dated January 28th. You do have, as was mentioned earlier this evening, a letter from the Farmington Valley Health District dated February 10th. In that letter, there is some reference to a number of the issues which previously the Health District had being worked out. There is that final issue with regard to making sure that the house that's there, the existing house, has a number of bedrooms made into a conforming situation, and prepared a memo for you. You can talk about that later on, but that's important, obviously, to provide proper continuous functioning of the septic system. There is also, as part of your package, an unexecuted driveway easement and maintenance agreement. Spoke at length with the town engineer about that this afternoon as well. It may be necessary to rename that document to private roadway as opposed to driveway easement. He felt strongly about that. That was important, and I covered that in my memo later on down as well, but that is part of your package. A memo from the fire marshal has been talked about before with regard to road width and grades, and the fact that he's comfortable with what's finally been proposed. There is a memo, and it's important to note for the record too, that CROG did see this application as one of their referrals and found no intermunicipal conflict posed by the application. That's important to note. Memo from the Conservation Officer dated December 9th, 2013, where Howard has reviewed this and finds the application with regard to the conservation issues here in keeping not only with the regulations, but the recommendations that he would make with regard to open space. And then finally, there were a number of memos from town engineers. The applicant has the benefit or not of being caught between two town engineers in this case, but there was one going out and one coming in. So there were a number of reviews. The final one that you just saw this evening, I just got this afternoon at 4, so I apologize for not getting to the applicant, but we just got it. Which basically indicates that there are a number of technical things that he wants to make sure are handled prior to the filing of the map and prior to any construction. So the memo that I put together for you, I think addresses that issue. I talked with him about how to handle that, and he's comfortable with the fact that whatever the commission should do, should it decide to approve this application, that if it's properly worded, those technical things can be taken care of prior to the filing of the map and prior to any construction. So that's basically all I want to say at this point. I'm not sure if there's any other reason to keep the hearing open unless you think there is. If there is not, I'm happy to go over a suggested motion once you close the hearing.
Yep, I'd like to move to close the public hearing.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Unanimous?
Commission have any other questions or anything you want to have at this point? It's been pretty well aired, I think, over 2 or 3 meetings. So.
Are you going to go through the proposed resolution?
Yeah. One of the things that I did this afternoon was try to provide a framework for the commission's decision. If the commission does decide to approve the application, I would suggest the following clarifications and modifications. One is, as I just mentioned earlier, a complete set of plans with all revisions shown to date be properly signed and sealed by a licensed PE and submitted prior to the issuance of any zoning certificates of compliance and issuance with any permits. Town engineer wants this as well. Obviously, these have to be properly sealed and signed and sealed. He wants to make sure that that happens. The Commission, I believe, finds that the requested waivers, could find that the requested waivers are acceptable in light of the following, and then typically what I just went through those and said that the existing grade of the existing property would benefit by the fact that the waiver be granted. The applicant wants to construct a new private road. The required grade and required paved width would cut significantly into the property and make significant cuts in excess of what would be beneficial to the neighbors and the environment in the area. The requested reduction in the paved width is granted in accordance with the fire marshal's memo. I would simply modify that comment based upon what was said this evening, that if the town engineer feels as though the material that is used for the shoulders is not stable enough to keep those shoulders solid to provide for emergency access, that alteration be made in the field at the direction of the town engineer. Basically, would recommend that as well and agree with that. As I mentioned before, the maintenance of the private roadway appears to be adequately covered in the private, what they're calling the driveway and maintenance easement agreement. The commission should make a note that the proper term in this case is a private roadway, not a driveway. The term private roadway should be used throughout the easement and maintenance document. What I would suggest too, that if the commission does approve this, what the applicant can do is revise that document, email it back to me, and I'll work with the town attorney to get the wording straightened out and find out that, if it's satisfactorily worded, town attorney approves that, we can process that as well. But I think that's one change that I would suggest have to be made. It is important, and I talked to the town engineer about this as well, is that there be proper maintenance provisions in that document so that if the roadway becomes it comes under disrepair, that we know who has to fix it, so that if a fire engine or an ambulance or a police car needs to get up there, that they are able to do that. And so there are provisions in that document that allow for the maintenance of that, and that each of the homeowners in the homeowners association would pay 25%, I believe. That's what's worded in the document to continue to maintain that. So it is in the document. I think the wording is accurate and adequate, and I would rely on the town attorney to tell me whether he agrees with it or not. But I think that's an important point that needs to be covered. Farmington Valley Health District, February 10th memo, leaves the modification of the existing dwelling a bit unclear. Applicant said that he had met with the town building official. As a result, I would suggest that the commission require the applicant to make the required modifications to the structure and allow the Simsbury building official to confirm that this work has been completed to his satisfaction prior to the issuance of any further permits on the other 3 lots. The fourth one, I had mentioned the fee in lieu of, and actually based upon the comment that was made this evening, I guess I would recommend that that comment be taken out of this particular motion. That was a suggestion that we take that $2,500 per lot. Perhaps that'll come up in a future subdivision. I'm always hopeful to try to replenish the open space fund should that opportunity come about. But in this particular case, I believe that offer's been taken off the table, so I would suggest we take that one out.
The whole comment?
Yeah, I think so. Just pertains to fee in lieu of, so I think so. The final signed and sealed set of plans submitted to the town engineer for final technical review and approval, as I mentioned before. His final review regarding any technical aspect of the proposed development needs to be agreed to and completed by the applicant. So the town doesn't certainly want to construct the road, but town engineer is willing to give him benefit his advice and direction with regard to the construction of it. Number 6, which will ultimately be, I guess, 5 if 4 is removed. Erosion and sedimentation control bonding is important here because of the grades and because of the significant topography differences that are here. So the amount of the bond needs to be determined by the town engineer. I don't have a figure for that this evening. He didn't give me that today, but I'm sure he can work that up in short order. The bond should be in a form acceptable to the town attorney and should be required as permitted with the most recent revision of the Connecticut General Statutes applicable to this bonding. The reason that last little wording sounds a little funny is that the bonding requirements have changed rapidly over the last few years, and so it's unclear sometimes as to what is able to be bonded and what is not. Typically, erosion and sedimentation control is able to be bonded, but we want to make sure that we do it in accordance with what the statutes allow. So I don't want to put the applicant at a disadvantage, but I also want to make sure and protect the town that if erosion and sedimentation control bonding is appropriate and necessary, that is provided. The town engineer and town attorney can work together on that. Number 7, any proposed site development of the lots is required to be reviewed by the environmental officer. And this basically goes to something I think that Bill talked about at the last meeting, is that prior to the actual development of this, any of these lots, certainly especially the new ones, houses can be located anywhere within that, according to the subdivision regulations, anywhere within that area that they're allowed to be located in. If the applicant wants to turn a house one way or the other, that's up to them, and I think the representation tonight that was made was a good one. But we want to just make sure that when that is proposed, that there's no adverse effect on the environmental component to these things. So it may turn out, for example, that the lot up here is reviewed by the environmental officer. It is in fairly close proximity to that wetland, so that Howard should get a look at that to make sure that he's comfortable with the fact that it hasn't changed dramatically from what the commission approved. And that's all that section says. And then finally, staff shall submit a copy of the proposed roadway easement and main agreement to the town attorney for review. And approval of that document will be executed and filed in the land records. I'm not sure whether there are any conservation easement documents there. Conservation easement document for this area needs to be prepared and submitted. Town attorney will look at that as well. Typically what's happened in the last few years is he's required also that the Board of Selectmen approve that. So we can do that fairly quickly as well. They meet every 2 weeks, so that could certainly happen as quickly as well.
Hiram, what is the town policy on tree cutting? And I remember from before, but what you can see from the road, and I mean, do we have anything to say about that? In other words, when you're building lots, and what I guess I don't have in front of me a definition of what the policy is.
Yeah, we advise people not to cut trees if they're healthy, to leave them in place as much as possible. There are certainly some situations, obviously, where the houses are going to be and trees around those houses that may be necessary to cut them. We certainly don't want trees that are diseased or potentially damage the house or cause mold or something like that. I would like to be able to say we have a lot of control over tree cutting on private property, but the reality is we do not. Tree cutting in the public way, we certainly have something to say about that. but we don't have any jurisdiction really over tree cutting in these areas, other than to advise people, to the extent we possibly can, to leave healthy trees growing in place wherever possible.
So they're clearly restricted in the conservation.
Oh, yes, clearly, and that's part of the document that we'll be getting from them, showing, what can be done there, what cannot be done there, dumping Christmas trees there, or other grass clippings and all that.
And it's going to be marked,
It will.
because that's been a problem.
That's what the applicant has agreed to do, and that's been helpful. People that live next to those things, they often say they really want those, and then what they end up using them for is their personal dumps, and we have a lot of situations around town like that. Very frustrating, because people get very indignant about it. It's not even their property, and they want to dump on it. So we try to sort of balance the equation there and make sure that that the conservation area serves the purpose that it was originally intended for, and that it doesn't become a dump, basically.
Isn't the conservation easement a taxable piece of property on that property?
Yeah, it's probably more taxable than if the town took it, certainly, but it's probably
But
certainly
it
less.
is included in their lot,
Yeah.
and they are taxed upon it.
Yeah, at a
So
lesser rate, I'm sure.
it's actually theirs, it's just that they're restricted from their usage.
That's correct. And that's why that what they're taxed on is less, there's no question about that.
Mhm.
But it's still theirs. And that was one of the benefits we talked about a couple of years ago to
Right.
some of these things, is that it's not totally removed from the tax rolls, and yet there's a benefit to the town for preparing some of these conservation easement areas, so.
You can't put a pony shed there or anything.
No structures typically, right,
You can
right.
grow newts.
Yeah.
That barn you want to get rid of, you can't move that into the conservation.
So that's basically all I had, unless someone else had questions or comments or something that me for having me happy to address that.
There are certain conditions in this draft resolution that need to be met.
Correct.
Okay, so if we take action on this, who polices the applicants meeting those requirements? You do.
It's my nickel. And whether I get Howard to do it or get the building official to help me or whatever, how that works together, I'll coordinate with the town attorney, town engineer, building official, environmental officer. It's my nickel.
Is it part of Henry Miga, the building inspector, is it part of his purview to have a copy of these so that he's not issuing permits until he makes verification that these stipulations have been followed through?
Absolutely. Whenever I write a decision letter, it goes to town engineer, building official, tax assessor, town clerk, usually fire marshal as well.
And placed within their building file?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or what does it make the note for the comment, for the record that the applicant, I didn't cover it in my memo, I'm not sure it's appropriate, that they did agree to plant some plantings for the abutting property owner, which I think is a show of good faith, and I certainly would recommend that the applicant continue with that discussion with the neighbors to benefit everybody in the area.
Has the applicant seen this draft resolution? Is the way to proceed to have a motion and then reread this into the motion?
I'm not sure you need to, I've given a copy of it to the clerk,
Okay.
so if there are sections you want to take
So we
out.
can refer to it.
That should be fine.
Any other comments or questions, or anyone make a motion?
I'll make a motion to accept the draft resolution for the applicant, number 13-08, Brian Denno, Denno Land Surveying, applicant Advantage Contracting LLC, owner requesting subdivision for the property located at 70 King Phillip Road, map H15, block 109, lot 005B, to create 3 lots, zone R80, February, today's the 11th, right? Yeah, February 11th, yeah, the draft.
And minus.
Minus .4. Draft minus draft 4, section 4. And also, should we add for comment B, should we add with the approval of the town engineer, because we talked about the road and the gravel? So for number 2B, request reduction in paved road width is granted in accordance with the fire marshal's memo of December 10th, 2013, with the approval of the town engineer.
Have a second?
Second motion.
Discussion.
Before we vote, Hiram, should we deal with the waivers prior to this draft resolution?
Yeah, I think that's certainly a good idea.
Okay, so there are two waivers being requested.
Road and, So do we assume the fire marshal will go along with this?
Yes, I mean, based upon the correspondence that he submitted, I think that's safe to say, clear.
So,
First one would be the road regulations.
Right.
I can give you the
two
specifics on that
waivers
here.
here.
You have that letter from
Okay.
Attorney DeFrino?
The dated January 28th, the pleaded by this office represents the applicant owner with respect to the above-mentioned application. We advise that section 16 of the subdivision regulations for design standards for roads, town of Simsbury calls for a maximum width of 24 feet, a maximum grade of 8% because of the topography site, as well as the size of proposed development. I hereby ask on behalf of the applicant, the planning commission, to waive the maximum road grade requirement and allow a maximum grade of 10% on the new road. Request is also made for a waiver of minimum road width from 24 feet to 15 feet, then with a provision which would be additional 4 feet requested to that.
I would, if you do decide to do that, I would certainly just add, as has been stated earlier, Bob stated in his motion, is with the approval of the town engineer based on his correspondence this evening.
Okay, I'll make a motion that we accept the waiver of maximum road grade of 8% be allowed to go to 10% on the new private road.
Second?
I second.
Kevin, second.
We already have a motion.
That's tabled.
The table, we're doing the waivers before the,
Okay.
okay, discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
No?
Aye.
So it's unanimous.
Unanimous.
And I'd also like to make a motion to approve the waiver of the private roadway width from the town standard of 24 feet to 15 feet with 2 feet of stable gravel apron on each side that may be amended by the town engineer when the construction or when the development's going on. If he deems it not suitable, the applicant will pave that area as well.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye?
Unanimous. Okay, we have a motion, it's been seconded to accept the application. I want to make it clear that in conjunction with that is the February 11th resolution approval, which I reviewed in detail, and the applicant now has a copy of that these items be followed.
Does it make sense that we have to add something in to make sure that the proper screenage goes up?
I'm sorry?
Do we have to make a motion to make sure, or is it just on their word?
On good faith.
On the good faith.
Yeah.
Good faith on the screening
Okay.
aspect between the neighbor and
Okay, yeah,
the abutting property owner.
okay.
If my hose can't reach the trees, can I borrow yours to reach them out?
We can talk about that.
Does he get to pick the
Do you feel the need to,
More poison ivy, is that what we heard?
No.
It will be important to pick the proper species though, because of
Any other
the
additions?
surrounding tree cover. Make sure that it's not just gonna die on us.
rhododendrons,
Deerfoot.
Any other additions?
maximums,
Okay.
bigots?
Okay, we have a motion. It's been presented and seconded, and we've added the foliage, we've referred to the resolution. The 2 waivers have been approved. Anything else?
I'll just make a comment. I think the applicant has taken the steps that the town has asked to have this subdivision be acceptable to both the subdivision regulations and fire marshal's requirements, town engineer's requirements. So it's my assessment that they've done a nice job to comply with all the constraints that revolve around this application.
On a beautiful piece of property. Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, unanimous. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for your
Good luck,
time.
gentlemen.
I told Ron that the state ordinance that says you can keep the sidewalk, this is only 65 degrees.
Don't mind.
Oh, sure.
And then,
It's still cold.
Wayne.
Yeah, I am.
In order.
I don't eat, so I get cold.
Struck out.
All right.
I can give you,
Discussion items on
by the way, on the chart.
Let's write all that down, make sure we get it addressed.
Just quickly, the economic this is regarding this marketing study, which is related to economic development. So the Economic Development Task Force group volunteers were requested, a number of volunteers came forward, and I believe tomorrow night, the Board of Selectmen will probably act on appointing folks to that board or commission. I think I mentioned to this group before that that group will be looking for a representative from the Planning Commission. I know some folks had volunteered to do that. I just want to make clear, and I'm not looking for a name this evening because I think the Board of Selectmen has to do that, but they will be looking for a representative from the Planning Commission, Zoning Commission, one from Economic Development, I believe one from Main Street, as well as the Chamber. So there'll be 4 or 5 additional members. So if you've already volunteered for that, you may be tapped for being that additional member. So I just wanted to let folks know that. That's where that is at this point in time. The only other thing, and I think I mentioned this at the last meeting, is that the Gateway Planning will be back with the draft code for the Hartford property on February 18th. That meeting will be in the library, in the large program room at 6 p.m. And I sent out a notice today to all the land use commissions, and hopefully the public will come as well. Ask whatever questions they may have about how the code will work, or how it's crafted, or what it can do. And they'll be back on the 18th. They'll be spending the day here, and that evening they'll be in the library for the public meeting. So I hope as many of you as possible can show up and bring your hardest questions. That's what they get paid for, and I'm sure they're very good at it. So if you have any other questions in the meantime, just feel free to let me know. So I'll try to get a copy of the draft. I just got the most recent draft tonight about 6 o'clock actually, and I'm just trying to print it out and read it myself to make sure there are no typos in it. But as soon as I finish that, by the end of the week, I'll get it out to everybody and have it on the web so people can look at it as well.
Right.
So you can take a look at that before the meeting, if you have some time. That's basically all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Gateway was paid partly by us and partly by the Hartford.
Right, the Hartford paid the majority of the fee.
So we're not in the position of the landowner writing regs.
Well, no, we're not. I mean, the landowner is actually the Hartford, and they've been closely involved, along with their real estate broker, CBRE, closely involved in this whole process. So every time we have either a committee meeting or any kind of meeting to talk about this, the Hartford's invited, CBRE's invited, Hartford's actually has their own consultant they've hired to look at the regulation as well. And that consultant has had input into the process and made some comments about the regulation, and Gateway's addressed some of those as well. So it's a really kind of an interesting thing. It's a very different reg because we don't know what could actually happen there. You know, we have an idea of the types of things we'd like to see happen there. And we have an idea about how we think they should look or how they should feel and how the fabric of that place should look. It's highly unlikely that we're going to see 4 or 5 more buildings the size of the one that's there now. That's absolutely certain. So what we think is that something form-based along the lines of the type of thing that we talked about for the town center, but perhaps at a different scale, would be exactly what could go there. So there'll be at least two different plans for the property, both the southern portion of the property and the northern portion of the property. And as you went to any portions of the charrette that we did back in, I think it was November, there were several different ideas that were floated. And so trying to put this regulation together to allow those things to happen there. At the same time, the CBRE folks are talking to potential buyers of the property and trying to fit all this together is really trying to make sure that there are a lot of moving parts here, and trying to make sure that everybody can be happy with what comes out of it is really the trick here. So it's an interesting regulation, it's an interesting task. We think we're headed in the right direction. Hartford likes it so far. They're very happy with it. After this process, when Gateway comes back here on the 18th, we'll see what comments land use commissions and the public have, and then get that back in front of the land use commissions and hopefully get a regulation adopted in the very near future. That should help with the marketing of the property as well. We think it's going to significantly improve not only the value of the property. I mean, for example, the field north of the existing Hartford building is a lovely field. There's no question about it, the cornfield. But what could happen there? You know, nobody really knows. And so what this plan does is come up with 2 or 3 different scenarios of things that could happen there. Farm to village, farm to table was one aspect of that. A significant agricultural portion. There's certainly some development on the property that's proposed as part of this regulation. So Hartford will be looking at that as well to see how it fits into their future plans. So we hope it's good for them.
Well, what time is that meeting?
6 p.m.
6 p.m.
Yeah. Probably last an hour and a half. Should be too bad.
There's a lot of interest. I heard today that the chamber thing on the 26th is sold out, and that there's no more room.
Yeah, the meeting room that they have is packed. I think it's about 75 people or 100 people, something like that. It's full, so. We'll talk about the same things there. If you come to the public meeting at the library, you'll hear basically the same thing. The Realtor will be there as well. I'm sure the Hartford folks will be there as well. We're all very anxious to make sure that something good happens there and something positive happens. Working hard toward that end. That's all I had, Mr. Chairman. You had asked me for, because I took poor notes last time, as to which commissioners volunteered for the attendance at the CROG meetings, and if we could reconstruct that if you wanted to. The meetings of the CROG are, January 16th is done, so no one has to go to that one. March 20th, May 15th.
That's me. Hold on,
And
March 20th?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I had volunteered for that one.
I have fallen.
You did? Okay.
We're going to say 2 at a time.
Yeah.
Yes, and I was going to go with you, I believe, on March.
March 20th?
March 20th.
Yep.
And then I would have the one after that, which would be
May 15th.
May 15th, and someone was supposed to accompany me. Was it first?
I think it was.
I'll take it.
Oop, I had that one down too.
Okay, the next one.
So Mark, you're gonna go to both?
Well, that's the key here, is that you want to
Continuity.
have consistent representation, so you know what was going on in the meeting before. So each time we sign up, we're actually signing up for one that we're attending with another person, and then we're going to the following meeting with another person. So in other words, there's constant rotation going on, but you're going to 2 meetings in a row.
Right.
But
So
what about Bill, though? He missed the second meeting.
why don't I go to the March and May? You can go to the March, and that'll have the continuity from last year, right? You went
So I'm going to be only going to 1 meeting.
Yeah.
And then you'll go to the March meeting with me, and then you'll go to the May meeting with someone else.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay?
You get that straight now. So Bill and Mark are going to the March meeting?
I'm not sure I got that. I'm erasing here. May 20th is Bill and Mark.
May 15th, isn't it? Or-
I mean, March 20th,
March 20th,
Bill and Mark.
yes, Bill and myself are going to be gone.
So
And then
May
on
15th.
May 15th, Bill and
Me,
another commissioner is going to be gone.
me.
You,
And then on September 18th, it's me and someone else.
correct.
Who's that someone else?
Step up.
September 18th.
Kevin?
September what day?
Did you raise your hand?
18th, which is a Thursday.
September Thursday.
My anniversary is the 17th, but I guess.
Perfect.
You
Okay.
better get
Be
clarification.
over by then.
We're up to November 20th. Who's going to join Kevin on November 20th?
I think I had the 20th, did I have it? I have the 20th.
So Bob and Kevin on the 20th?
Yep, I have that, 20th.
Okay, the asterisk note below is if you have, something comes up business-wise or, you know, some family thing, or you're going to be in Alaska for in May, you call someone else and we switch off, just like church ushering, okay? But this is the grid we'll start with, and then if something comes up, just call me or whatever, and we'll arrange it.
I'm willing to play an alternate as I do on the board now. So call me if you need somebody to show.
All right,
So just so you know too, those meetings are on the third Thursday of every other month, 7 PM, West Hartford Town Hall. Typically, they're in room 400.
Fourth floor, right,
Fourth floor.
directly above the atrium,
yeah.
the entranceway. It's straight up,
Straight up.
and right outside the elevator.
And parking there a lot.
Correct.
Front, front.
And there is a
Validation.
validation, right there in the meeting room itself. You can validate it on a small machine there.
Yeah, because West Hartford now wants money till 10. It's all about the money. Anyway. Okay, anything else, Howard?
That's it. I did prepare this schedule of rotation of alternates for you.
Okay.
Do you want to keep this, or do you want me to keep it? How do you want to do this? I mean, I'm happy to give it to you.
You can keep it.
Okay. So we had no alternates seated this evening, so February 25th meeting, we'll see. Listed first alternate, Rich, the second alternate, Gary, the third alternate, Ron McCandro. So in that order, we can see it for each meeting.
Great.
That's it.
Just a question for Hiram. I know on the last zoning board meeting, I guess they were talking, they seemed concerned about the number of apartment units going in. So can you just kind of recap that conversation that you had with them?
Sure. There's, I don't know if I'd say it's concerned, but certainly the question is out there as to where we're going with regard to overall development in the town. And somebody said, well, how many apartment units do we have? And how many apartment units are approved? And how many should we have? So those are all really good questions. And typically, those are the kinds of things that the planning commissions look at when you're doing your plan of development. There's no need to wait for the plan of development. But one of the commissioners said, well, that's really a planning function. Let's work on that. So what I said to the zoning commission was, well, tell me to work on it, and I'm happy to put that on my plate to work on. So putting together some information about what we have now, where we should be going, what the current status is, and I'm happy to do that for them. And I'm happy to include the planning commission as part of that whole process as well. So we'll be working on that in the very near future, trying to put that
So
together.
in the meantime, if say EB comes in and wants to go in for the development to add an additional 250 apartments, where are we able to deny that? Are we?
Well, it's a zone change.
It's a zone
So
change.
what will happen
It's
is,
not a subdivision.
Yeah, right.
right, they did a subdivision for
right,
that
so that's what
property.
gives us the ability.
Yeah, but well, it's a zone change, but the fact is, because it's a zone change, it's referred to you for comment. And so you have opportunity to comment on it at that time.
Hiram, is there still a statute on the state that requires the suburbs to continually make affordable housing on a yearly basis, add units?
We're
And
under,
is it being followed, or is it being
No.
enforced?
it's definitely being enforced, but that's what the whole Meadowwood thing was about.
Correct.
You know, 8-30G is the section of the statutes that requires suburbs which are not exempt to provide a minimum of 10% of their housing in affordable, for affordable units. And affordable is defined in the statutes, and I think gave you some information just a little while ago about what that number was.
Mhm.
I sent that all out. But yeah, we're still subject to that, absolutely. So if someone comes in with a piece of property and says, we want to put an affordable housing development there, the zoning regulations don't apply anymore. So whatever they choose to put there, as long as it's safe and the drainage and the traffic are dealt with adequately, very difficult to say no. So one of the things that I've suggested to the zoning commission is, and that's why we put that workforce housing regulation out just a while ago, that provides a series of alternatives for people who develop 6 different subzones in that regulation, which are kind of neat. And affordable housing can be provided in any one of those 6 subzones. We haven't had an application under it yet. We almost had one, but the zoning commission decided that the piece of property at the top of Plank Hill, for example, where that Plank Hill intersects Firetown there, somebody came in to look at that existing office building and see whether that parcel could be changed into residential units. The office building is kind of out of place in that area anyway. It's probably non-conforming. It's a PO zone, but it's there in the middle of a residential area. So there'll be a proposal sometime in the near future to change that lot into a residential units. I suggested to the zoning commission that 6 units would fit there and not be out of character with the rest of the neighborhood. They didn't agree. They thought that fewer was better. And so I think the plan that we'll see is probably for 4 units. It'll be very close to the same exact size of the existing residences that are in that area, which is an R15 zone.
Mhm.
So, but yeah, so we're definitely going to look at that in the near future, and I'll be glad to keep you up to date on that as well. There's somebody, Kevin asked me to bring a copy of the plan, for example, for the Dorset Crossing for this East Point development. There are 7 buildings here. There are 168 units shown on the property. There's a clubhouse on the property and a pool on the property as well. But that's the most, and that's been approved, but no construction has taken place there yet at that point in time. So, there's been 299 single-family units that are part of the Meadowwood development. They're doing some soil remediation up there now, but they haven't started any construction on that property as well yet either. So 74 of those units are workforce housing units that will ultimately qualify under the regulation that Mark was talking about, the 8-30G. Out of 299, 74 units, that'd be the largest amount of workforce or affordable units that we put up in a very long time. But there are very few units in town that are classified as affordable. We're at about 3%, 3.12 or 3.2% out of 10. So there are a lot of affordable units that are needed in order to bring us up to that standard that the state's looking for. So that's where we're at right now.
Is there a requirement on approval that be started by a certain date, or there's no?
For this one, East Point?
Meadowwood.
Oh, Meadowwood, yeah, actually 2017. That's such a large development, it's probably very likely that it'll be broken down into phases, no question about that. Their judgment, the stipulated judgment from the court says they've got to build affordable units on a prorated basis with the market rate units. So they can't just build out all the market rate units first and leave the affordables till later on. They've got to build them on a percentage basis. So if they build 5% of the development first, then a certain portion of those have got to be 5% of the affordable units as well. That's our understanding of how that decision works. So,
And are those units forever designated as affordable?
for, I believe it was 40 years, maybe 20, I can't remember now. The litigation took place over such a long period of time.
Right.
The law changed either 3 or 4 times during that period of time. It might be 20 years, but it's only 20, maximum of 40 years.
And how does that work? Is there a pro rate to it, or whatever that unit is bought for or sold for the first time, is that the maximum it can be resold at?
It has to do with the income of the inhabitants. You're thinking a little bit along the lines of what happened with the powder forest, where there was a resale restriction on the value. That is, it could only be sold for a certain percentage over what it was bought for.
Well,
That doesn't apply to these units. It applies to the people that live in them. So they have to qualify, income requirements basically. They have to qualify in order to move into or buy those units. And if they don't qualify, then other units have to be made available to people that are qualified. Because there's such a significant difference in size, the 74 units that are affordable in that case are a bit smaller than the market rate units up there. I think some of those units are probably 12 or 1,400 square feet, and some of them are 3,200 square feet. So there's a significant difference. I don't think the developer is going to take any of the larger units and make those affordable. So they're going to make sure that the folks that live in the smaller units do in fact qualify in terms of their income. And that's how that's.
I'm just thinking about on the resale, and I'm slightly confused as how that works as far as someone buys into those, because they aren't necessarily rentals, are they? They're going to be sold as condominiums.
Yeah, they could be. They could be. But we don't really control how they're going to, I assume that they're going to be sold. That would be the most logical thing, because these are all.
Are they classified as apartments?
No, they're all single-family freestanding structures, every single one.
But we have no control on either rental or purchase.
Correct. But if they are purchased or rented, they can be rented or purchased for that payment for that mortgage on that place or the rent can be no more than 30% of the inhabitants' income.
And if they're there, and if they sell after a year, does the next person have the same guidelines?
Now, those
So that goes
guidelines-
with the property.
Yes, and those may change. In other words, as the income levels in town rise, 30% of, they use actually the state median income. So as that income,
$50,000 or something like that, so they have to be.
56 or 58, yeah, so it's a bit lower.
And so they wouldn't be, let's just, so you're looking at, they would have to qualify as, say, a $30,000 income if a bank or someone was able to set the mortgage up for them.
Right,
And that would cap where that selling price would go.
that's right, exactly.
I see.
It gets hard, you know, I worked in one town one time where there were a number of units that were restricted, and I know, not to be disparaging at all, but these little old ladies lived there. They didn't qualify anymore. What are you gonna do? Tell them to leave? It was very hard. And so, there's a lot of judgment that goes on here. We wanna make sure that when those units are in fact lived in by people that do qualify, that they continue to qualify. And so we would require the developer in that case to hire somebody to maintain on a yearly basis a list of the fact that they qualify, those people qualify.
Isn't that the problem we have with Eagle Farms? I mean,
That's a really different animal because it was done at a different time, under a different framework.
but it seemed to have the same criteria as where it was
It's
meant for.
Somewhat similar, but now, and under the laws that these units were approved on, it's a lot more stringent.
I see.
I don't think that we'll ever get into that situation again, because.
Well, that was a town situation because the land was bequeathed to the town, correct? And so it wasn't, we had some culpability there only because that property was always under the town control.
Yeah, I really can't comment, other than to say that it would be done a lot differently today.
Yes.
That's about as far as I can go right here.
So, on an affordable unit, if you move in and you meet the income restrictions, but then you get a lot of promotions and your wife gets a job.
Maybe win the lottery.
Maybe you win the lottery,
Yeah.
you still have the home, because you own it.
Yep,
But the next person you sell it to has to revert back to.
that's correct. Yeah. If they designate those 74 units as the affordable units, there's going to be pressure on those people to say, hey, you know, you don't really need to live here anymore. You know, why don't you relinquish that? Go to someplace else that you can now afford much more. And why don't you let us have this affordable unit to somebody else who really needs it? There is a significant need for affordable units in town. There's no question about that. For rental units, there's a significant need as well. Look at that too. So we'll see.
College graduate just out of schools, just starting out, qualified? Sure.
Yeah, absolutely, sure, absolutely. Yeah. Young people that, you know, want to work in town, and maybe they can't find a place to live here in town, but they work in town. One of the things that people ask about is, you know, why are we building, you know, getting so many applications for residential units, whether it's single family or apartments or whatever. You see, we want more retail, we want more businesses. The reality is that unless there's people to buy things, the retail folks are not going to come here. So the retail that we're going to get is going to be very small scale, very sort of incremental. When there's a significant a group of people, an additional block of people that want consumer services, whether it's dry cleaning or grocery stores or a place to buy milk or drugstores or whatever, that's what's going to cause the retail segment of the market to flourish. And so it's a chicken and egg thing, you know. And I think what we're seeing first is right now there's a significant, probably will be for the next, say, 5 to 15 years, significant pressure to build more rental development. Now, some of those rental apartments that we're seeing now could easily be converted to condominiums. Some of them, for example, the West Street project, could easily be converted to condominiums, the way they're constructed, the way the utilities are set up. Those folks know exactly what they're doing, and should those units continue to remain apartments or should they turn into condos will depend on what the market wants to do at that time. So anybody that's paying attention to what they're doing could probably construct similar projects so that they could be converted if they needed to be from ownership, from rental to ownership.
So along that point, what is the zoning for West Street? What's that?
It's a PAD.
The PAD.
Yeah.
So if someone comes in with a piece of property that's zoned for an apartment building, according to the PAD, we really can't deny the application, is that correct?
The zoning commission has a lot of authority basically under the PAD.
But the planning, not zoning,
Planning,
right?
if it's a subdivision, that's the planning commission's jurisdiction. If it's a subdivision of the property, such as you saw with Powder Forest.
Right.
That was just a lot division basically, but if it's a subdivision for, say, a subdivision for an apartment house, this commission would have input into that process.
So if it's not a subdivision?
It's not a subdivision, you don't have any authority, other than if it's a PAD regulation change, that is zoning regulation change, then you have a referral under the statutes that you make back to the zoning commission for them to consider. So you can either think it's a good idea, or you think it's a terrible idea, or you think it's an okay idea with modifications. So you put together your recommendations based upon that.
PADs are overlays though, aren't they?
Essentially.
Over an existing zone.
They actually, when they land, they change the zone though.
Yes, but they have to get approval for a PAD application.
Absolutely.
So it's not like we have PAD zones already in place, but other than ones that have already been approved.
That's right.
It's a base zoning with potential for a PAD over the top if they apply.
Yeah, overlay zones, it gets tricky a little bit. Overlay zones tend to be
The industrial
misunderstood a little bit, in that an overlay zone is a zone that lands on top of another zone, and those requirements of the underlying zone stay there.
Right.
So for example, if you were to have an overlay zone on top of an industrial zone, technically you could have a whole series of uses that may or may not be compatible. What the PAD does, and the way it was designed, was to replace the zone that was under it before. So for example, on Dorset Crossing, that was in large part excavation, earth excavation.
Right.
And so now, once the PAD has landed, there will not be an earth excavation zone again. So that's not a use that could come back to the surface.
No, but it allows us at that application point to deny the PAD because there is an underlying zone there which we can leave in place or we can recommend to be left in place as compared to turning it into a PAD, which means it's open to almost any type of commercial or residential development or combination thereof.
When the PAD is proposed to the zoning commission, they have to have, as part of that, a conceptual plan to show what is proposed.
Correct.
They can't just say, we're going to do residential and we'll tell you about it later on.
Right.
Or we're going to include some commercial, but we don't know where it is. So for example, it was just filed, I think either Friday or Monday, a proposed PAD for a portion of the Powder Forest property. It has commercial as part of it, has an assisted living facility as part of it, and it has some residential units as part of it as well. The zoning commission will be getting that at their next meeting, March 3rd, and referring that to the planning commission for comment. So there are 3 distinct parts to that particular PAD, whether the commission likes it or doesn't like it.
Is that the one that was in front of us a couple of weeks ago?
Yeah, well, that was for the property line
Redrawn.
realignment.
Right.
Redrawing the property lines.
Yeah, right, so it's an assisted living.
At present time, that's a commercial zone, a C2 zone,
It's a B2 zone, I believe.
B2 zone.
Yeah.
And so they would have to ask for a referral.
I2, I'm sorry, I2. Yeah.
I2, they'd have to ask for a referral, or zoning would ask for a referral from us
Right.
to see what we thought as far as what the development was being asked for. In other words, all those components in a already set to plan, and we could deny or approve accordingly if we liked what we saw.
So lots of moving parts, lots of things going on. If you have any other questions, specific or general, whatever, just let me know. As I start to work through this stuff, I'm happy to get that information to all of you, so whatever comments you have, great.
We gotta do some business. One other thing too, we've mentioned the plan of conservation and development. Is that something that we start on this year, next year? I mean, you've got a lot going on, but should we do an outline and think if we're gonna take it to 6 pages or what we're gonna do?
The next time it's due is 2017, because it was done in 2007. But I think as some of you recall, it took us about 4 years to do it last time. So we want to start early. I don't think it's going to be that difficult this time.
No.
One of the suggestions that I have for the commission is to consider doing it in 2 parts, and this has been done by a number of different towns. Rather than do a kind of a large document, which is really just a tremendous amount of work, both in terms of graphics, in terms of work going into it, they split it into 2 parts. And one is an implementation plan, and the other is a strategic plan. Both of those are slightly pared down. It doesn't mean they're less effective, but they're easier documents to compile, they're easier documents to work with, and they're more effective in terms of getting things done. If you take a look at the plan every once in a while, you can see that in the implementation section in the back of the plan, there are a number of things that we've worked on over the time. We're revising the regulations, putting together form-based codes. There are a whole series of things that you'll find that we have been in fact working on. But I think what we can do is we can talk about whether we should do that implementation and strategic plan type of approach as opposed to another sort of mammoth, large document that just sort of strangles everyone.
Well, we were changing to form-based, or trying to transition into form-based code, and that's where I think all of our time, we wanted to get it right as far as the...
Well, my observations as a relatively new person to the town at that time was it had a lot more to do with other things that were going on in town than that. It had to do with big boxes and other things. And that was really kind of what stuck in everybody's throat, one way or the other.
Well, they kind of happened at the same time.
They did, and
that River Oaks development was thrown on us at the same time, and so we were incorporating our development plan with that in mind, I'm sure.
Yeah, I think there was a lot to deal with at the same time. I don't sense that that's the case at this point. If someone were to come in with something really outrageous for the Hartford property, I have no idea what the financial impact would be. It's obviously a big piece of property. Building there is already over 600,000 square feet. So if somebody came in with something like that today, I wonder what people would say. Interesting. So we'll see.
When do you start?
Next year.
All right, thank you, Byron.
Let's do the minutes. Sure. Let's review the minutes on the meeting of January 28th, 2014. Any comments on the first page?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Line 25.
25.
I just want to read it and then get comments from the commission. Mr. Deno is requesting to develop a new road that gives frontage to all 3 lots and add a service road that is 15 feet wide with a hammerhead turn. Is that accurate, or was that an accurate representation of what he proposed?
Because he's abandoning one and creating the other.
I don't think we're giving frontage, depends on what the...
Well, you're creating a new section of the road. They're using an existing drive and access, which was for 2 properties. And then they were creating a new road off of that, or a new drive, private drive off of that, in addition. So I think that's what that's actually trying to say, is that it was an additional piece of new road that was going to be accompanied by the old road as well, but it improved the old driveway. In other words, they're using a part of the existing driveway. And then they are teeing off of that and abandoning the other half of that driveway and creating this Hammerhead Road. So I don't know how you would make it any clearer.
Is it technically correct that all 3 lots would have frontage?
On that new section of road, yes. All of their driveways are gonna come off of that new section of the road.
Okay. Look at this plot, key map here.
I'm not sure.
Here's, oh, they don't show,
No.
See, it's this piece right here. This was the existing,
that's the.
and this is that new section of road that's gonna be coming off it at that new radius.
What's the frontage on King Philip on that first property, Mark? Does it?
The frontage,
On King Philip, the existing road.
right. Well, this King Phillips is down here.
Right, so what's that dimension down at the bottom?
For this
No.
existing,
Lot number 1 near your left hand.
this one,
Yeah.
lot number 1, it has a 265-foot frontage.
So do all of them have frontage on King Philip?
No.
No.
Oh, yes, the back one does.
It's abandoned, but
It's all part of the conservation easement, but it does have, if King Philip, the old King Philip Road is going up through there, yeah. There's, 400 feet of frontage. But none of them are going to have addresses on it, that's why they're creating this new side road.
yeah.
I mean, it'll become now back property, not necessarily frontage.
See the pin here? Yep.
Leave it like it is, any way to improve it?
Because even here, that private drive is feeding that existing house in the
Yeah,
back.
yeah.
And this Tower Run is going to be that new private road. So there are 2 distinct pieces to this, this roadway.
Okay, what adds a little bit to the confusion is the next paragraph goes on and describes the road a little bit more. So I'd like to suggest this for line 25.
Yes.
Mr. Deno is requesting to develop a 15-foot wide private road that gives frontage to all 3 lots with a hammerhead turn, which has been approved by the fire marshal. Still not the
The word
best.
service road,
Not applicable.
it shouldn't be anywhere.
Right.
Right.
I agree. All right.
Any others on page 1?
Line
Just-
two-
I was going to
Go
just
ahead,
say,
Ron.
just for the clerk, on line 11, if you could put Junior at the end of my name for all the tenants. So my dad's a resident in town, so he's out here.
Okay. Any other on?
Yeah, line 30, if we, accept what I proposed up above, we can strike. Mr. Deno added that the service road will be private. If they can just come out. And on line 31, currently reads service road, should be changed to private road.
Any others on page 1? Page 2? Page 3? Hearing none, I'd like to have a motion to approve the minutes.
So moved.
As amended.
As amended.
Second.
We have a second. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Unanimous. Any opposed? None? Minutes been approved with changes.
Anything else?
Mr. Chairman?
I make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
We have a second?
Second.
Aye.
Any objections? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you all very much.
Funding for Simsbury Community Television is provided in part by contributions from viewers like you. Thank you.